I'm Dr. Ashley,
I'm Sherry.
and this is From Her Point of View.
Hey girl, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I am great.
So, we're going to start with a conversation that is near and dear to hopefully most of our audience, as this is a podcast that comes from a woman's point of view. We're going to discuss a woman's worth.
Yes.
And I think it's important to present and explore that because as women, we're active contributors to and participants in the attainment and maintenance of the health, comfort, and prosperity of other people. You know, the people in our communities being our home, our family, our workplace, friends, extended family. But that can be to the detriment of that woman because while she's taking care of everybody else, she could be neglecting herself. And then with that neglect, it's manifested in things that are rampant in the Black community where high blood pressure, weight gain, we have physical and mental breakdowns. Is also demonstrated in what we tolerate and allow in our intimate relationships.
Not only in our intimate relationships, but what we project upon others. Like people could be totally innocent in our lives, but because we have a few bad seeds per se present, we allow the negativity that they bring and put upon us to be put upon people who have nothing to do with that.
That's a
Our
good point.
children, our parents, our friends, our co-workers. So that's an interesting point that you make. But yes, a woman's worth is something that we definitely need to touch upon. I know for me personally, I've been running into a lot of different conversations that make me question what we are doing as women with how we value ourselves. And what is it that we're putting out into the world to make people think that it's okay to treat us the way that they treat us, good or bad? More so bad than good, because that's why the conversation is being had. But what is it that we're putting out in the atmosphere to make people assume that this is okay?
So, what have you heard? What have you heard, or what conversations have you had that have made you feel that way?
So, for example, I have a friend who I was talking to recently who is in a relationship with someone who I the way that I put it is that they're looking for companionship. They're not looking for a relationship.
Who's looking for
So
companionship and who's looking for the relationship?
so the woman is looking for relationship. The man is looking for companionship. The man is much older than the woman. So you would think that with age comes wisdom, as they say, and that this man would want to settle down, be with someone, long term and kind of just be happy, right? But because the option of being out there is out there, he chooses that life over the stability of being with this one woman who loves him dearly. So I asked her, why is it that you stay? Why is it that you continue to endure what this man throws your way, which is shady as fuck? Why? And she basically said, I don't know. And I don't know was just it was so much more confusing that you didn't know why you allow yourself to be in this place because she was hurt. She'll argue this man down about what he's doing and what he's not doing, and he ain't coming in the house on time, and he ain't answer his phone, and all of this stuff. But yet you continue to let him lay in your bed. You continue to let him come in and out. You might argue with him on Monday, but on Tuesday, y'all buddy buddy all over again like it never happened. But yet you're miserable. And you find yourself running the streets trying to find him because he's out here doing whatever he's doing. And like you're disappointed in yourself, but you're not doing anything to make the change. So talking to her and having this conversation, I was really baffled. And don't get me wrong, I can't give no relationship advice. I can't tell you that what you're doing is necessarily wrong if it works for you. But when it doesn't work for you, at what point do you change it? And she was just so lost. She had no idea where to begin. And that's where the woman's worth came into play. And I just basically told her that you have to value yourself more than you value this man in this makeshift relationship that you have, because he just wants companionship. He wants someone that he can come and lay with at night when he want to lay with, somebody that's on deck to have dinner when he want to have dinner, or watch a movie when he want to watch a movie. But then when he want to do what he want to do, you got to fall back. So if you can't get with the program, then you need to get another program, because this one ain't it. And that was basically how that conversation ended.
And so, how do you think that demonstrates how she feels about herself,
I think
about
she
her self
felt
worth?
bad. I felt like she felt bad. It may not have resonated at the moment, but when you sit back and really think, like, this person loves me, meaning me loving this person, and I'm just being honest because I care for you, I'm sure she sat back and thought, like, what am I doing? Why do I let this man do what he does to me? And now she has to do some soul searching and really figure out why she continues to stay in a relationship that's not fulfilling, basically.
And that goes back to what I said about a woman's worth, and how what we feel or how we feel about ourselves is demonstrated in what we tolerate and what we allow in an intimate relationship. For example, like, you might allow your partner to slack or in providing support and companionship, but you stick around. You allow them to speak and treat you any kind of way, but you stick around. You allow them to talk to you in a way that you probably wouldn't even allow colleagues and strangers to talk to you,
Mm-hmm.
but you stick around. And this is supposed to be, one of the people that's closest to you.
Who love you.
So, with that being said, she can enumerate all the things that are going on. Clearly, you can clearly see all the things that are happening, but you can't see the clear trajectory of how to get out or how to deal with it in a way that you're going to have to decide whether you're either going to accept that, take it for what it is, not beat him up about it all the time because you have accepted that behavior,
Mm-hmm.
or get out.
And see, the get out part is the hardest part. A lot of people have come accustomed to the dysfunction of the relationship. So you'd rather be with a man who disrespects you time and time again just to have a warm body to lay next to. That's not okay. So then you got to really question yourself in why you accept that type of behavior. For her, I feel like a big part of it is that she lacks self-esteem. Although she wants this relationship to work, and it's not working, she doesn't feel like she's worthy enough to get someone else to be in a relationship with. So the fear of being alone conquers her ability to remove herself from this situation that's hella toxic, and so
One
she stays.
one of the ways that we can demonstrate that we value ourselves or that we understand our self-worth is by doing the work that needs to be done before we get into relationships. That's not always something that can happen. I know, things happen. You meet somebody, you like them, you move forward, so on and so forth. But when you start recognizing these things, that I'm willing to put up with this and this so that I'm not alone, there's a deeper issue there. So you have to really work on yourself before you can even be the type of partner that, for someone else, let alone understanding what you need, or, you know what I'm saying?
No, I get it. And when you say work on yourself, a lot of people don't know what that means. They don't even know where to begin with that. What is
Right.
work on myself? There are people who have had, who have been in relationships since they can remember, 10, 11, 12 years old. And every time you've been with someone, now you're 40 and you can't remember what it was like to even be single because you've never had that experience. So at what point did you have time to focus on yourself to figure out what you like, what you don't like, what you want to tolerate, what you're not going to tolerate? And we'll talk about deal breakers and things like that later, but you never got a chance to grasp the understanding of your own needs. So your needs are predicated based upon who you're with. You do what they do, whether you like it or not. And you don't even recognize that you have basically lost, and I'm going to say this the wrong way, individuality. You can go ahead and correct me.
Individuality.
Yes, you have lost that.
You lost
So
yourself.
you have no idea. And that's why it's so hard to be alone because that's an unfamiliar territory for you. So that's why I said it's better to be in a dysfunctional relationship than to be alone, because being alone is like unknown. How does that work? What does that look like? They have no idea. But I think it's important to recognize that and to say, like, it's okay, like, to step outside and try something new. At some point in your life, you're going to have to. There's people who've been married for 20 years, 25, 30 years. And then let's say their spouse dies. Now they're forced to, quote unquote, be by themselves. I won't say be alone because that's a whole different realm, but you're just by yourself. And so they choose to either be with somebody else or they choose to be by themselves. And now they have to figure out what life is like without this other person. And for a lot of people, they have no idea. They have no idea where to start because all they did, their life was built around whatever this other person wanted, good, bad, or indifferent.
So going back to what we said about getting to know yourself, getting to understand what your needs are, that goes all the way back. And when you decide to go to therapy and work on all those things as I have and things of that nature, they're going to take you all the way back. So what was happening to that little girl? What was happening in that little girl's life that moved through her experience to where she is now as a woman in a relationship? Because those things, as much as we would like to leave some of those things behind, they come into who we have become. They are the ingredients of what we have become. That's the foundation. So what was happening back then that we carried into teenage, that we carried into adult years, that allow us to be in these dysfunctional relationships that don't equate with our worth?
A lot. I think it goes back to parenting and not so much what the parents did or did not do. It could be the presence of a parent being around. You could have a mother who allowed herself to fall by the wayside and not really be in relationships that were conducive to her or her family. And so you learn from experience that my mom accepted this, so therefore this was the norm. Even though as we grow up, we depict right and wrong. Even if it's taught to us a certain way, we depict what is right and what is wrong. And you could say, you know what, I saw my mom go through it, I am choosing not to do that. Or you could say, my mom went through it and this is all I know. So then you choose what path you're going to go down. With the father, you, for a woman, her father is her first love, right? How her father treats her is going to affect how she responds to men in her life. So it could not be her father. It could be an uncle who practically raised her. That man who steps into her life at a young age and kind of molds her and holds her hand and leads her, that is who she's looking for. That is who she is going to try to mimic the man that she wants to be with, to be like this person. If she loves and respects this person. And typically That's her father. So if her father's not around, or he just decided that neglect was what it's going to be, she don't necessarily know what's the expectation of a man in her life. Do you agree or disagree?
I agree with some parts. I disagree in other aspects.
Okay.
Um, we discussed, I think, probably in one of our previous episodes in season one, about the roles of the father. How in the One Question, One Truth episode, where one of the participants was saying how her father was absent and she wanted him to see her. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was important for that man to be there and for her to be seen. And she wasn't getting that. So that definitely shaped her experience and what she chose to accept. And then there are people that have present fathers in an everyday capacity, and they might choose to be with somebody that's the complete total opposite of what they saw every day.
That's true, but I also feel like okay, so for the parenting style of it, right? If you have a father who's holding your hand and he's telling you as you grow up, this is what a man is supposed to do. He's supposed to court you. He's supposed to do this. He's supposed to do that. Again, at some point in time, you choose what's right and what's wrong. You choose what makes sense for you and what doesn't. But if he's there and he says to you, baby girl, let the man open the door for you, let him pull your chair out. When you start to go on dates and things like that, that's your initial expectation. Now, if the man that you're with is like, I ain't pulling her chair out, I ain't opening her door, and she accepts that, well, there you go. That's something that she's going to find herself accepting down the line, because now it's not a big deal. When in reality, it was a big deal in the beginning. You came in with expectations that this is how it's supposed to be, and this person has changed that for you. Well, he has introduced you to something else and you said, okay, I'll accept this. And that's just one small example,
Mm-hmm.
because it gets way bigger and way deeper than that.
Mm-hmm.
But when you think about going back to the beginning,
It
it
all
all
goes
comes
back.
from,
It all
yeah.
goes back to the father being there, or whether he was there or not. Whether he was there or not, it has an effect and it takes a toll.
But just your presence isn't enough. So you have fathers who are in the house, who are present, who are making sure all the bills are paid and doing all that, but they're not building that relationship with their child. And we're just using women, so I'll say daughters. They're not building that relationship with their daughters so that they know as they get older, this is what a man is supposed to do and not supposed to do. And I'm sure if you had enough relationships, none of them were the same. They were probably there's probably characteristics that made you think like, Dad, I did go through this before, or that person did used to do this, now this person does that, but they're not all the same. So it all comes back together from something. But what that something is, I don't know.
How does one develop self worth? I did a little research and I'm going to share with you what I found. So I found an article by Mateo Sol, and you can find it on lonewolf.com. I'm going to share the link in the description for this episode. It was published earlier this year. And he mentioned that one develops low self worth for two key reasons. Those reasons are childhood traumas and core wounds. That's the first one. And the second one is to protect oneself against what we fear. In essence, telling yourself you're less than to protect yourself from what you fear. What do you think about that?
I think that's pretty accurate. I think a lot of people develop a sense of non self worth because of the things that happen to them in their life. And then also from a mental standpoint, what we tell ourselves is important. So if we're not feeding ourselves good positive energy, we're not going to put out good positive energy.
And almost everything goes back to our childhood. I mean, whether how we feel about ourselves, how we see others, it all comes back to childhood. And then that self-worth or lack thereof coming from trauma and wounds. I think a lot of things stem from that.
Yeah, I agree.
So we talked about, or, that article really highlighted how one develops low self worth. So, how do you build that up? How do you build up your self worth?
So for me, I would say that in developing self worth, it is important to first identify who you are and whose you are. Because when you know where you come from, no one can tear you down. Like we come from royalty, whether we want to believe that or not. We are special people. We were divinely made, and we have to know that no matter what's going on in our life. So it is important to know who you are and to know whose you are because we're all wonderfully made. Point two on that is in the process of understanding and developing self worth, I would say that it is imperative to acknowledge one's feelings about where you are mentally and emotionally. Being honest with yourself and the state that you're in, whether good or bad, is important because we need to grow from that. Do you agree?
Yeah, I do. And it's important for us to do that work because when we build our self-worth, then we're able to build for our children. And it becomes a cycle. When mom does not feel good about herself and who she is, that is projected on the child.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure which episode it was with Iyanla. That's my girl, I think I'm her in my head. Um how she was talking about how this woman was pregnant and the circumstances around her pregnancy and everything were so traumatic, and the
Mm-hmm.
child basically, as she said, steeped in that.
Mm-hmm.
And so however she felt about that, that's going through the fiber of her being,
Mm-hmm.
and she's carrying that child with that negative energy and with those negative thoughts. So it's very important for us, particularly as women, as Black women, to really take care of ourselves and to establish that self-worth, because what we do and how we feel about ourselves is projected on our children and in our relationships.
Mm-hmm. And it's unfortunate for the mother and the child in that situation because when you think about it, the mom, we don't know what trauma was inflicted upon her to make her feel some type of way about herself. This pregnancy may have been one that was unwanted, but maybe she was forced to carry. That
Mm-hmm.
happens at times.
Mm-hmm.
So feeling that way and projecting that onto her child unknowingly
Mm-hmm.
is a guilt in itself, right? So for the child to come into this world, and I hear it a lot when people say, oh, they just bad, oh, he just bad, oh, she just bad, but where does that come from? Like, where does that come from? Prime example, my guy's brother, they have a baby. They're both very mild mannered, very calm, sweet. I've never seen them get upset. Not that they don't, I just never seen it. But they're really cool, calm people. Their child is just like that. She's very mild mannered. What's the word that I said? She's bashful. Like, there's so much innocence to her in the world. Like, when she senses something's not right or not normal, and not normal in the sense that it's calm, she kind of wards away from it because she's like, okay, this is not familiar to me. But she was bred into that calmness. So when she came into the world, that's really how she was. So I feel like in that situation, like you said, with the mother and the child comes into the world screaming its little head off, and you don't know why, because the child is just as disturbed as you are.
And
So
that
as a mother,
environment that they created for that little girl in your
mm-hmm,
example, you can see it. It's demonstrated in the way she moves, the way
mm-hmm,
she interacts with people. And just like you said, with the way you feel about yourself, the environment you create, that is going to be manifesting your children. So,
mm-hmm,
and as you also mentioned, it's inadvertent sometimes. We don't mean to project these things on the children. You're not knowingly trying to tear them down, but because there's something broken in you, you don't have the tools to provide anything different.
and
So
that
that's
goes back to,
go ahead.
like you said, the acknowledgement of where you are, how you feel in any space. You could be in a room full of innocent people, and we talked about this before. If you walk into a room full of innocent people and you are projecting negativity from yourself, you're projecting that onto other people. And then the mood changes, the environment changes, and nobody knows why. And it's because the negativity that you brought in. I always say to people, people will say, well, I'm not in the mood today. I'm not feeling it. Okay, well, you figure that out. I'll call you back later, because you're not bringing that into my space. Mm-hmm. Or you come in, you come into my home, and I always say you on 10,000, but you're on 10,000 and I'm just trying to be even today. Like, I need peace and relaxation today. And you're coming in here on 10,000, you got to go, because I can't get there with you. So yeah. And that's just from a feeling perspective. You have to not allow people to project onto you things that you don't want in your life or you don't want in your space.
And that's something you do when you have self-worth. When you have self-worth, you won't allow these negative things, this negative energy to be in your space, because it's not good for you. And because you care about yourself and you think that you're worthy, you won't allow that type of energy around you.
I agree. Totally agree. There's another point to that too, because I wrote down 3 things. One, again, being identifying who you are and whose you are. 2, being acknowledging one's feelings and mental state. And then 3 is being willing to be open, honest, and communicate. I say communication because a lot of people say you have to teach people how to treat you. Well, if people are treating you bad and you're not saying anything about it, it's never going to stop. Whether they know they're treating you bad or not, the behavior doesn't stop because you're not stepping up for yourself. When you have true self-worth, you're not going to let people walk all over you. You're not going to let people talk, all about you. You're going to speak up for yourself. And so it is important to speak up for yourself, communicate what needs to happen, what doesn't need to happen, and just be honest. Like, there's nothing wrong with being honest. It may hurt people's feelings, but better theirs than yours. Like, you need to live in your own peace. And I don't mean that maliciously, but like, if a person is not, if they may not know that they don't have your best interests at heart. But when you realize that that's not the case in this space and time, you got to be honest about that with yourself and with them. Not today. I can't deal with it. And you just move on from it. Let's try this again tomorrow.
So in keeping with the question, how does one develop self-worth? The question that followed after that is, how does one lose self-worth? So we mentioned in the first part how you develop low self-worth from the childhood trauma and the wounds, and then trying to protect yourself from things that you fear. How else do you think people lose self-worth?
I think that people lose self-worth by allowing other people to take advantage of them. And that goes back to, like you said in the beginning, childhood trauma. Like, where did you learn that that behavior was okay for someone to just take advantage of you? And being taken advantage of, there's levels to that. You know what I'm saying? It's not just the extreme, like molestation and things like that, abuse. It could be the way that a person talks to you, a way that a person dismantles you in front of the likes of other people. It could be talking about you behind your back. And that's that talking about you behind your back, but then being a friend in your face. That's taking advantage of you. You're not my friend if you're talking about me behind my back. If you only come to me when you need something and I can never rely on you, that's taking advantage of a person. And a lot of people will feel some type of way about themselves because although they give, they're not getting anything in return, which will make them feel some type of way.
And like you said, it goes back to the childhood traumas, because the things that you experience as a child will then allow you to be put in a position where you will allow other people to take advantage of you. For example, as a kid, my experience was whenever something happened, where there was a group of children and something happened, something bad happened, when it came back to my parents, it was always my fault. So when even knowing the circumstances, everything that took place, where it's being given to you, where it's being delivered to you from, those other parents are coming to you and this happened and that happened, it's your fault. You should have done something different. You should have this, you should have that. When a
Mm,
child hears something like that all the time, it can damage their self-esteem, especially when the child, you should know the character of your child.
mm-hmm.
Not to say that your child won't do this or that, but you can listen sometimes to things that have happened and you know whether or not your child was involved and in what capacity,
Mm-hmm.
because you know the character of your child.
Mm-hmm.
Then to also be the child accused and not have anybody standing with you, not even your parent,
Mm-hmm.
because then they're saying, then, that was your fault. You should have done this, that, or the other. Basically reprimanding you in front of the other people and everything when you know that it was not your fault. That does something to a child's self-esteem.
Would that be considered character shaming? Because you are basically saying that I am not this person that I am. Like I am this person. I am a great child, for example. And you as my parent know that I am a great child, but because I got caught up in a situation, and as my parents, you know that it's not in my character to do these things, you're still impeding that upon me. You're saying, well, you should have done better, when in reality I didn't do anything wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So you are character shaming me, saying that you're not who I thought you were, when in reality I am that. I am a good kid.
And if those two people don't stand with you, what do you think that says to a child? What does that make her think about the rest of the world? Well, if
Mm-hmm.
I'm not worthy enough to be stood up for by the people that are supposed to love me the most, what will anybody else do? Or what must anybody else think of me?
Mm-hmm.
And will I ever be good enough?
That's a good point. Like that's a really good point, because the parents set the bar
Mm-hmm.
for the child, and in their upbringing to say, we got your back regardless.
Mm-hmm.
Like everybody in this world needs to know that there is one person that they can depend on. And for most people, it is their parents.
Mm-hmm.
You brought me into this world, you care for me, you're supposed to care for me down,
Mm-hmm.
like with no questions
And
asked.
even if I was wrong, deal with me later by ourselves. Don't
Hmm.
impugn me in front of other people
Yeah.
to
That embarrass
further tear down.
that embarrassment will definitely jack you up.
Yeah.
Like it will jack you up for years to come.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's so funny you say that. I remember being in school and there was this guy in my class, and I want to say I was probably like, maybe I was in fifth grade, but I'll never forget this day. He was being bad in school and he was the considered the class clown, right? Well, he was the class clown because lo and behold, he had low self-esteem. So that was his way of getting out of being talked about or feeling lesser than what he was. And one day he was doing the whole class clown thing, and the teacher called his mom without warning. She came in there because nobody knew what was happening or whatever. Mind you, you're already the class clown for a reason. You have low self esteem. You do this so that you're not picked on. We don't know what's going on in your home life. And like I said, unbeknownst to anybody, the mom comes in the class with her pajamas on, slippers and all, and commenced to whooping his ass in front of the entire classroom. He never recovered from that.
That's humiliating.
Never recovered from that. And he was a young boy. He never recovered from that. And you think that he got picked on before. He really got picked on after that situation. And we were young. Like, we were still in elementary school. I cannot even imagine the stories people would go back and relive and retell about him in his later years. Like, how do you recover from that? That should have never happened. And like
Mm-mm.
you said, despite what I'm doing, reprimand me in a better way
Mm-hmm.
than this, because
Mm-hmm.
you have made things 10 times worse for me by doing what you did. But yeah, he was. I don't want to say he was a bad kid, but like I said, he was the class clown, always interrupting, cracking jokes, not listening, not doing his work. So I get it, but there were so many other ways that they could have went about reprimanding him besides her coming in with the belt. And
And
she legit
what was
came with the
going
belt.
on with that mom that made her feel like that was okay for her to come in there and act like that?
I feel like it was embarrassment. Embarrassment on her part. Maybe her pride was bruised because now I got to come up to this school because your teacher's calling me, telling me that you ain't acting right. Don't get me wrong. My mom threatened us too. If I got, she would say, if I have to come up to that school, it's going to be a problem. Well, let's just say she never had to come up to the school because we already knew what was happening and we didn't want no parts. Okay. And I feel like if you could beat your child, I mean, she beat the hell out of him. If you could beat your child like that in front of a classroom full of children and staff, what are you doing to him behind closed doors? Which in turn, you have to question what kind of parenting skills is happening here for your child to be acting out in the first place. Mm-hmm. So let's take accountability on that.
Mm-hmm. What are one of the other ways one loses self-worth? You mentioned being naive about the world and people.
Yeah. Being naive will allow people to take advantage of you, mm-hmm. right? When you don't know no better, they will take advantage of you. When you think you know better, they will take advantage of you. So you have to know the position in which you're put in, the people that you're around, and what's really happening. Because if you don't, you will be taken advantage of. And in any situation, when you're taken advantage of, that damages how you feel about yourself. Mm-hmm. It really does.
And when you feel less about yourself, it'll also allow you to accept the things that serve no purpose in your life.
Exactly. I totally agree.
You'll accept whatever, you will allow whatever, you allow people to do whatever. Yeah. Now we talked about those things. Let's go on to question 3. So question 3, how much of one's self-worth is wrapped up in physical appearance?
So when I read the question, I had to stop for a second and really contemplate on that, because that's an interesting question, but it's also not an easy one to answer. So I think it depends on the person, because if you have a high level of self-worth, although physical appearances matter, you are comfortable in your skin. Like you don't feel the need to go above and beyond to please the likings of other people. But I want to say for average people, it's probably 50-50.
Average how?
Average people, like probably, I mean, in the world, like.
I mean, you mean average looking people, average, like average, everyday Joe? Like, what do you mean?
Yeah, just people in general, just mm-hmm. in general. I feel like it's 50-50. I don't, we all, let me go back. Because we understand the importance of self-worth, but I feel like we all have our days where we're not at our best. We're not 100%. And on those days, despite how we felt, because Friday, I might be feeling myself. I'm 1,000, right? But then on Sunday, I might be feeling like a 10, and a 10 is not good.
No, 10 is good.
A 10 is not good compared to 1,000. I'm feeling
10. Okay, my scale was off. Go ahead.
I'm feeling like 1,000 on a Friday, but on Sunday I'm only feeling like a 10. On that Sunday where I'm feeling like a 10, my appearance matters to me. How I look at myself that day, where my I feel like my self-worth and my self-esteem is down, how I look is going to matter. So the question was, how much of one's self-worth is wrapped up in physical appearance? I guess to clarify that, I want to say 50-50. It's 50-50. Your self-worth is wrapped up in how you view yourself, how you look at yourself.
Okay, I see what you're saying. I personally don't have a lot of thoughts around my self-worth per se, based on what I look like. Worth.
So esteem. So self-esteem. self-esteem is affected by appearance, self-worth, not necessarily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. I will rephrase that then. Th- Self-worth in itself is not really wrapped up in the way that you look. Um,
Well, look,
because
but that's from our perspective. There are people that feel less than because they're overweight.
okay. Yep.
You know, and I mean, as a person, they feel less than,
Mm-hmm.
or they may feel as a person less than because they can't wear certain labels.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And you know that ties into appearance. They may feel less than because they don't have the shape that they want.
Mm-hmm.
As a person, they feel that deeply. So I think it's a little bit multifaceted there.
It's definitely a fine line
Mm-hmm.
between work and esteem.
Mm-hmm.
And you really have to identify which one of those are you leaning towards more
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to appearance. And we know that everybody's self-esteem is affected by appearance in some shape or form, because how you look to the world and how you look to yourself matters, whether
It
you
does.
want to believe that or not.
Oh, it matters. It matters.
Yeah. But the worth of it, like, you're right. There are people who feel bad about themselves because they can't wear Gucci,
Mm-hmm.
or because they can't wear Chanel, which that shouldn't even matter, but it does, especially in the circles that you're in, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you are, we had one of our podcast participants talk about how he wants to get a new car, right? And he wants to get a new car not because it will make him feel better, but because when you think about it, he's working in a realm with other professionals who drive Porsches and BMWs and all those fancy cars, right? Audis. They driving all of that, and he coming in with a Toyota. So he could definitely feel some type of way, like, well, am I worthy of being in the same group that they're in because I drive this and they drive that, or they wear designer suits, and I'm coming in with, I don't know, what's a low budget suit brand? I don't know. But
I
you know
don't
what
know,
I'm saying?
Stacey Adams. I don't
So
know.
he's coming in with Stacey Adams, and they coming in decked out with
Men's
crap.
Warehouse.
There you go. Wait,
K and
I
G.
mean,
K and G.
K and G, okay. But he's coming in with K and G. No disrespect to nobody wearing K and G, but he's coming in with K and G, and they got on designer, I don't know, Louis Vuitton outfits. Like, then he has to question his worth. Am I worthy of being in the group with these particular professionals because I don't have the money they have? I don't have the style they have. I don't have the ability to purchase the things that they can afford. That could definitely affect his his feeling of self-worth in that form,
Mm-hmm.
because you're not lining up with everybody else. Maybe you're not worthy.
Mm-hmm. And then so not so much of what one looks like, but how much money one has. How does that, factor into how you feel about yourself, especially as you mentioned with the groups of people that you're around? There's a lot of comparing happening. I think that kind of leads into our next question with the social media. That question is, how much does social media impact self-worth and self-esteem? And that's where that comparing comes in,
Mm-hmm.
because everybody, when he goes to work, that person that you mentioned before, he sees these people, these professionals, and they've attained that, and he's physically there with them. He sees that. But on social media, everyone shows you what they want you to see.
Mm-hmm.
So you're seeing this person with the bands, stacks of money, which I won't even say much about that. But then you're feeling a certain type of way about that person having that much, or you see that person posing in front of their huge house with their beautiful car, and you're living in a one-bedroom apartment. And then you're comparing, well, if they can do that, they must be this or that. So that makes me only this or that.
I agree. And social media is full of so much fake news, as they say. People have the opportunity to display to you what they want you to see. Um, the the people who develop Instagram, I read an article, and I'll have to find it, where he talked about that. Like, he talked about how this platform was put out to get people connected, but what ended up happening is he realized that people were using it for different means, not just to connect, but it became somewhat of a negative thing, because they weren't showing you their real life. They were showing you what they wanted you to see. And what they wanted you to see was the glitz and the glamour, not the bad stuff, just the good stuff. And what started happening, in which we commented on, people start to believe that what they're seeing is real, and that their lives should be just as glamorous as the people on IG. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you right now, there has been, and I have been busted and disgusted and taken photos and posted them for a reason, though, just to show you that all the glitz and glam is not my everyday. But there are some days where, yeah, I'm feeling myself. So let me go ahead and post that. But that's not my everyday. And if you don't see the bad things that are happening in people's lives, you really can't believe all the good, because it's not that all the time. And we can't be sucked into that. We can't be sucked into what we see as being real, in turn making us feel less than, because we don't have what we think they have. Because what they have may not be real either.
Right. They're only showing you what they want you to see, with the filter that they want you to see it through.
It's damn filters.
They can distort it, but then there's the other side. Those things may be real, but instead of being able to go ahead and applaud and be, congratulations, I'm glad you did such and such, then you start thinking about yourself and why I haven't, or why I can't. So social media, there's a balancing act that has to happen there. Mm-hmm. And you take what you see with a grain of salt, but you also don't absorb that into yourself and make judgments about yourself based on what you see.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's why on my Instagram, on my personal Instagram page, I'm very selective about what I post, the consistency of what I post. I started the 30 days of positivity and affirmation for that reason, because I felt like I needed to break up the monotony of the fashion world, to break up, what everybody deemed as being real or not. And then on a lot of my news feeds, it's a lot of negativity. And so to break up what I felt like people were seeing based on what I was seeing, was I was going to put out something positive, and I would do that for 30 days. And just to see the difference. There's one person that I follow, and he posts, I don't know where he gets it from, but he posts something every day. It's like a calendar. And I like every single post, because I actually look forward to what the post is going to say for the day. And it's nothing but positivity. So when I'm on there, I check that first. I like that, and then I move on. And like I said, you never know what you're going to come across. You have no control over that. But we need more positivity in the social media space, and we need authenticity. Like I said, being real. Every day is not a good day, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. And every day you don't have a face full of makeup. That's okay.
The other factor about social media, not just what you see, but are the likes. The number of likes that you get on a certain post, or the number of views, or the number of comments. People compare and judge based on that as well. So it's not just the, what you see, but it's also the reaction that you get from other people about what you have posted. Mm-hmm. That makes it different as well.
It does. I didn't even think about that. The likes and the comments, and you post something worth viewing, or so you assume, and you get 5 likes, and then somebody posts some bullshit and they get 250 likes, and you're like, well, what's wrong with me? Nothing's wrong with you. People saw it.
Mm-hmm.
You got to the people who you wanted to get to. It doesn't make you less than, and you shouldn't allow it. Like, we have to stop allowing what's happening on the outside truly affect who we are and
That's the
how we
main
feel
point.
about ourselves.
Yep.
Social media, the news, stuff we read, we have to know better. And that goes back to my original response. When you know who you are and you know whose you are, none of this outside stuff matters.
You have to do that internal work.
Yeah.
And as we mentioned in the beginning, you have to tear down some of those traumas. You have to tear down some of that old way of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I cannot stress it enough. It is so very important for our community to seek out mental health assistance. There's so much generational trauma that we carry as a people in our community,
Mm-hmm.
that mental health is so important. You have to go, you have to speak to a therapist. I mean, you have to speak to at least someone you trust. You have to talk about these things. Otherwise, they fester within you, and then you start building up these irrational thoughts about yourself and about what is happening around you. Sometimes you just have to unpack all of that stuff with a trusted confidant or a therapist so you can filter through that stuff
Mm-hmm.
and really get to, like you said, really get to know who you are and whose you are, and the depth of, I can't think of the word, but just how much just being you is valuable.
It matters.
When I was in elementary school, we used to say every morning, "I am unique. There's no one else like me. I am special."
I love that.
How sweet is that?
I love
But
that.
it's something to reinforce every day. When those children came in there, if they didn't hear it at home, they heard it at school.
Mm-hmm.
Not only did they hear it at school, they said it at school. And when you say something, you can speak it into existence. So tearing down those generational curses, those generational traumas, and then speaking softly and kindly and lovingly to yourself makes a difference.
Yeah, it does. I agree.
Okay, so when you get a chance, just a little reading material for you all to think about as you are developing self-worth and self-love is an article that I found on a website called unspokenwomen.com. I'll share the link for that one as well in the description for this episode. And it is entitled Motivation, a Black Woman's Guide to Self-Love. And it talks about some of the forces that affect the way we feel about ourselves, especially living in a culture where our standards of beauty and self-worth are not as high as they would be somewhere else. But this article, it gives you, it's very concise. It gives you 3 key steps on ways to work on building yourself up, developing self-love. Um, the first step is to achieve, the first step to achieving self-love is to acknowledge and list all of the things you love about yourself. That's something that you can do. You can sit down and write it out. And when you do that the first time, it may not necessarily be easy. Um, because everybody doesn't feel good about themselves, but there are good qualities about yourself. And when you write them down and when you can see them, that makes a difference. That's just one of the steps that's in this article. So I'm going to share the link with you guys so you can read it. And I found it inspiring, and I'm hoping that when you read it, you do too.
And also, to add to that, if you get a chance to read the article, you find it interesting and you want to talk about it, we are open to having guest speakers on the podcast, and we can kind of go over your thoughts and feelings in regards to the information that you are getting. So feel free to reach out to us via IG, Facebook, and also through our email address at fromherpointofview.llc@gmail.com.
You've been listening to From Her Point of View. the show curated specifically for women by women, covering a wide range of topics. Though this is from her point of view, we want your point of view too. Become a part of the show. Questions, comments, and feedback are welcome through Instagram and Facebook, where we post regularly. Email us at fromherpointofviewllc@gmail.com. Leave us a voicemail at 443-507-8032. Tune in weekly and please share with your family and friends, as we can be found on your favorite platforms: Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Amazon Music. Thank you for listening to From Her Point of View.